Hello and welcome. You are now listening to the You May Be Seated podcast. Technology is crazy, bro. I mean, bro, AI is gonna take over, bro.
It really is.
Bro, I'm so scared of AI.
I don't believe anything on the internet.
Nope.
I already did before, but now AI has just made that even worse.
It's so funny because like with podcasting, like if we were to do ads, like there's a program where you can get AI to like recreate your voice to read the ads for you, but in your voice.
No.
So like you don't have to do anything. AI will just do it all. Like
That's creepy.
Yeah, it's
like
crazy.
imagine like you're basically like the best puppet you could ever get.
Yeah.
Is AI.
It really
Because you can
is.
get it to do whatever you want, say whatever you want, and it could sound just like you, bro.
That's crazy.
That's what's wild about it. Like you could definitely be you can impersonate pretty much anybody.
Yeah, you really can.
in the whole world.
You really can.
But man, it's wild. AI is gonna take over,
We
bro.
can do a whole episode on AI.
Hey, I mean, the only AI we need to be talking about is the apostolic influence or
That's
whatever.
right.
Apostolic influence.
The apostolic intelligence or whatever.
Apostolic.
whatever it is the church world says. But man, this is my first time in here. I think the second time actually in a suit doing an episode, man. It feels good to be in here on Sunday morning. Feels really good. I mean, I'm glad to be here with you, bro. I'm glad you got to make it in, man. And it's we've been thinking about this episode for a long time, doing this with you. We had you in mind. We're just like, bro, we just gotta get him in here, but we gotta get him to talk about the right things, like just the right things, get you in the flow of what you like to do. And bro, I couldn't help but to think, man, I was thinking about my family. And you know, our relationship is you know, obviously you're my brother-in-law, but our whole family, I'm like, man, just the dynamic of our family is crazy.
It's pretty wild.
It's pretty wild. We've literally got it all. Like,
yeah, we have it all.
the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah.
but man, it's at the end of the day, it really is just God's will, and it's just a beautiful family overall. And I'm just so thankful that you're my brother-in-law. I'm thankful to even, you know, just on a deeper level, just to be able to work with you in ministry, and it's a privilege. It's just so awesome, man. I get to work with family and friends that become family.
Yeah.
But I think that's, you know, that makes ministry bearable, I think.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Because there's time.
It's nice when you can do it with people you love. You know?
Yes, seriously.
Really
Because there's frustrating moments, bro. There's frustrating moments in the kingdom, and man, I'm telling you, at the end of the day, when you can sit back and look back and you can just laugh about it with family. That's fun. It makes it fun.
Makes
But bro, thinking about family overall, I couldn't help to think like you're like the ultimate family guy in my mind. Honest to God, man. I think that it's a pretty known thing.
So true.
In the church. The church overall just has such high respect for you for being that family guy, for being that father and that family man in the house. And I know a while back ago we had M4M, you know, Ministry for Ministry, something we do here at our local church, and it was about marriage.
Yeah.
And a lot of the things that you brought to the table, talking about marriage, talking about kids, it was such high wisdom and such high, you know, just high influence that you had on a lot of us, even including me.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, I didn't think about that. I didn't never even felt like, you know, that was a big deal, but you brought it to all of our attention. So we were kind of almost making fun of it, you know, in a way, playing around with it, saying, you know, RJ, the ultimate family,
the ultimate husband,
the ultimate husband. But
I remember that. I remember the first time you got we did for Father's Day.
Yeah.
Like Father of the Year.
Oh yeah,
Pillar. I remember that.
Yeah. But what morphed you into this? Was it more so like your family? Was it, man, I'm not gonna do that, or I am gonna be that? And what made you just really get what has taken you to be the man that you are right now?
I think it's a little bit of everything, a little bit of all of what you said, like just seeing different examples. I had great parents growing up. They always made sure we were in church every Sunday. They you know, applied great standards and such. And they always did a great job with that. And I just remember my childhood, like growing up, I would, you know, you get in trouble. I grew up in the 90s. So anybody who's listening, they know when you grow up in the 90s, like your parents were raised by your grandparents. And though they were raised to pretty much like, hey, you listen to what I say, like what I say goes. It was just like boom, boom, boom. And like, so feelings weren't really taken into consideration as much. And so I remember just being like, man, I want to cry about this emotion, like about whatever the situation is, but they just told me they'll give me something to cry about. And I just remember I remember moments like that. So when we had Kylo, like everything that I said I was going to do, oh man, my kid's not going to throw that temper tantrum. Oh, I'm not doing any of this soft, gentle parenting mess and all this different kind of stuff. When we had Kylo, it was a different ball game because Kylo, he's full of emotion. He's just, I mean, he's everything. Like that kid has taught me so much.
Yeah.
And I'm so proud of him because he didn't even have a single clue of how much he's taught me about who I actually am.
Mm.
And I was just like, man, I want a better childhood for him. Like I had a good childhood. Don't get me wrong. Like I said, like my parents were great. Like the kids I grew up around, like in the city,
Mm-hmm.
they're all, out of church. They're, arrested or have been arrested, just different things like that. And they took different paths, but they always saw what path my parents were trying to lead me down. And they were like, hey, you can't, it got to a point where it was like, hey, you can't really hang out with us anymore.
Mm.
Like, and I never understood it. I was just like, but I mean, like, I'm not going to get in trouble. No. And I think it was more or less they were afraid of like what my parents would do to them if I had gotten mixed up with them. And so that, not just that, but I also just wanted to create like a great childhood for all my kids. We as you have multiple children, so you have to raise them differently. Like individually, they're just, okay, so I can't handle Cruz the same way I handle Kylo.
Yeah.
Like I have to be kind of stern with Cruz because Cruz won't take you seriously.
Yeah.
And and not that he's a great kid too. Like, but he is like me. He doesn't take anything serious. He's always joking. He's always just, he's goofy. He's our goofy kid. I love that kid so much. But I handle him differently. So I have to be a little stern with him so he knows I'm serious. Like, look me in my eye, I am serious. If I do that to Kylo, he breaks down. Now Kylo's like, Dad, I don't like when you're mad or yelling. I yell maybe once or twice in 6 months. You know what I mean? Like I very rarely ever yell. And so I try to, when I guess to answer that question, like how did I become this? It was just different influences,
Even by your own kids.
Yeah, even by my own kids.
Yeah.
So it was just like I evolved. And then like the influence of, my wife and just how she is. And she's just, she's the sweetest person. And she's cared for people. I remember coming into this relationship and I mean, we're celebrating 13 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Being married. And I remember when we were dating, there were times where she was just like, look, I can't even talk to you if you're going to be mean to people. And so that's where that ball started rolling.
Yeah.
Like just being considerate of other people's feelings. Because growing up, I never saw my dad cry. I never saw him have really like, we hung out, we played video games, we laughed, we joked and different kinds of stuff. But when things got real, there was nothing, like I couldn't really rely on him to.
Right. You've never seen
that.
An emotional man.
Yeah. So it was just like, all right, well, it looks like I got to be that for my kids because I want them to be, I want them to not have to go to therapy when they get 20, when they turn 20 years old.
Bro, this is such a great conversation already because just that aspect that you brought, that element that you bringing in here, it's unlike any other guest we've had because you're saying, growing up in church, like the Pentecostals always get made fun of because it's like, oh, we're always so emotional,
Yeah.
But when you get to be in the presence of the Lord, you're going to be emotional. You're going to be driven by emotion, and it's okay, But the thing is, your approach growing up was so different in the sense that, like you said, you never seen an emotional man before, so you didn't know how to care for someone else's feelings.
No.
You didn't know how you had no you didn't have their feelings at all, their situation at all in mind.
Yeah.
It was kind of like white and black for you, right?
Yeah.
I mean, man, wow. And I know, obviously I know Dom, my sister-in-law, is quite the opposite when it comes to that. Not
Yes.
saying she's emotional, but she's very purpose, full.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
To where she considers everybody else.
Everyone
One
else.
moment I'll never forget with Dom, and I'm gonna try my best not to cry when I talk about it. But I remember when my wife and I had our first miscarriage, and the only person in the hospital other than my wife and obviously myself was Dom. Dom was the only one that came to the hospital,
Yeah.
and it was like, man, it was like 3 a.m. Like it was the middle of the night,
Yeah.
and she drove the whole way out to York Hospital. Janet's in pain, obviously, going
Mhm.
through all that stuff of the miscarriage process, and I just remember she was sitting next to me. Janet was just turned the other way, had her back turned towards us, and I just didn't know what else to do, and
Yeah.
she just reached down and just held my hand,
Yeah.
and like for her to be there in that moment, like it just showed me like how much passion she had
Yeah.
and how much love. And like to this day, I think about it. I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
she was there for me.
She's
She's
very
just rock.
compassionate, man.
She's just so rock solid, bro.
She's solid, bro.
So rock solid. And yeah, that moment will always stick with me because like I can only imagine, obviously, the type of man that she's morphed you in after so many of those moments.
Yeah.
Obviously, 13 years of marriage.
Yeah.
I can only imagine, like just the emotions, as far as emotionally, how she has shaped you,
Yeah.
and helped you with that side.
Yeah.
Because that was a moment that I needed help emotionally in that moment.
That's awesome.
And but man, going back to like your kids, I've always said, kids, when someone's pregnant for the first time, I'm like, here we go. I'm like, I told him a while ago, I was like, here we go. I was like, bro, this is either gonna make this. You're gonna see the real you right here.
Yes.
When your kid comes in, the parent is either gonna grow, I feel like, or the parent is going to take a huge step back and lose all sense of reality. I feel like,
Yeah.
because we've had several parents throughout the years. I've seen that play out where they get their kid and all of a sudden they lose out in the relationship with God.
Yeah.
For you, bro, I gotta tell you, man, it's like what you were saying, how Kylo's taught you so much. I just don't feel like even emotionally, but I feel like spiritually,
Yeah.
your growth has excelled, tenfold with when Kylo first came into the world. Because I think that, and maybe obviously I want you to speak on this a little bit
Mhm.
more, but I feel like you've received a huge revelation of being a priest in your home. And I've never seen you just flat out, man, I'm gonna dive right in the word of God. I'm gonna make sure I'm a man of God. I'm gonna make sure I'm somebody that this little boy can look up to as a man of God.
Yes. I understood the call, so to speak. I understood the responsibility, though I didn't understand anything about being a parent. I mean, as you're saying, like, you're gonna have a lot of firsts. Everything that you experience with with your son, you will have a lot of firsts. Everything is, hey, the first time we experienced this, it's the first time I've ever had a 5-year-old. He's about to go into kindergarten.
Yeah.
And I understood just how important it was to have a man of God in the house that served God, that worked in the ministry, that took those kind of things seriously. And I understood what it meant for him to see a man of God be submissive to someone else, like to a peer. Like, so I grew up with Pastor Josh.
Mhm.
I've known him since I was 13. My wife really grew up with him. She's known him her whole life. And so it was nothing for me to transition into, hey, he was my peer. Now he's someone I'm submitted to.
Yeah.
It was nothing because I was already, like, I was ready for that,
Mhm.
And it's easy when you, like you said, respect and you love someone, like, hey, but growing up, I never saw my parents be submissive to a man of God. So I just remember always hearing, hey, he could have really did this different in the message, or I didn't really like how long he preached, or he could have left this out, that out. And it was just like, I always thought that that's what it was. So when I came to the Pentecostals of York and I started getting, closer to different things and like the ministry, and I start hearing the word submissive, and I'm just like, well, what's that? It's always had a negative connotation in my mind.
Right.
I was like, submissive. I had never heard that. Like, what does that even? So it was just seeing and witnessing and just how different people handle each other in the church, and seeing how, a man of God can be submissive to someone else. It was those kind of things. I was just like, okay, when I have a child, I want to make sure I put that on display at all times so that he understands, all three of them understand that, hey, look, you, even though you're an adult, you still have to be submitted to someone, submitted to a man of God. And so this has always been important for me. But, man, I lost my train of thought.
Well, I'm like just sitting here listening, taking it in, and one thing I keep thinking of is these are you got to recognize make or break moments.
Yes.
And what I'm hearing is a lot of like, this moment was a make or break moment.
Yeah.
And
I had a lot
and what? So I think
That's
just
awesome.
from hearing it, kind of like we kind of danced around it, talked about it a little bit, but. To you, how do you handle like when it's you're like, okay, this is a make or break moment right now?
Oh, how I handle it, man. I just think about like how it would be viewed as like, all right, so say, for instance, when I was younger, I had a choice whether, I got in trouble at school and stuff like that, the private school that was here. This is how I handled it. I had the choice whether I was going to go to public school or whether I was going to go to a private school. And so, or stay in this private school. And growing up, I always had like that spirit of discernment, and it was something tugging me this way. I kind of listened to that because over the years, it's always been right. So even if my flesh is like, hey, you don't have to worry about that. It's always like, no. My spirit of discernment, my that conviction, so to speak, I guess, pulls me in the right direction. Mm-hmm. I just try to think of how my kids look at me. Like when I make a decision, like make or break, whatever, how will they view me? Because if I have a moment where I'm just like, oh man, forget this, and like I just slam my hands on the table, I walk away. And then a week later, I see Kylo do it, or I see, I'm like, oh man, so it's just, parenting is literally the toughest thing you'll ever have to do, because there are some make or break moments where you're just like, man, okay, how do I overcome this, and how do I be a good influence to them through this?
A lot of people say, like, I hear and I get what they mean. Like when preachers say, I don't care what they think about me. I don't care what the world thinks about me. I don't care what others think. Well, you kind of better care for, for lack of better, you kind of better care. You kind of have to how they perceive you, because it kind of does matter.
It does matter.
It really does, especially
matters.
Your family within the household. It matters.
Yes.
And I know what they're actually saying. It matters. I don't care in the sense that I'm not ashamed of the gospel.
No,
I agree 100%. Yeah. But on the flip side of things, you better care as far as how people perceive you, because you don't want people to think, is that really a Christian?
Yeah. Exactly.
Is that man really Christ-like? Is that man really love the Lord? I mean, what kind of man does that? What kind of person does that? Exactly. And kind of to go off of your thought there, as far as, you kind of brought the example of, if you get angry or you get frustrated and then you see someone else in your family or even a close relative kind of parrot the same thing.
Yeah.
You're like, in a sense, you're saying, bro, I did that.
Yeah.
Like I did that. And if you feel terrible because your impact, your influence is so much deeper than you really think. And I think people overall, whether you're a leader or not, I think we all need to realize that we all influence someone along the way, whether it's our family, our coworker, even at work. Like, you wouldn't believe how many people that you actually are influencing at work with the way that you say things, the way that you do things.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that in all things you do, that if you are going to have them, parrot something that you do, let it be something good.
Let it be something.
Let
good.
it be something that has blessed you. Let it be something that has put you in a right position with God. Let it be like good things. Let it be kindness. Let it be love. Let it be joy. Let those things influence others, and let them be influenced by those things.
Yeah.
And to go off of your other point, as far as when you were saying that the make or break moments, like what you brought up, those make or break moments, I always think about. It's kind of what you said. Yeah. What do my kids think? I always just take everything a step further. Even, what does my wife think about me? Yeah, it matters what my wife. Very few people can hurt my feelings in this world.
Very few.
But my wife can hurt my feelings.
Yes.
with the way that she thinks about me, with how she views me, with how she perceives me, and as well as some others like Pastor. I want to make sure that I make him proud. But more than anything else, more than anyone else, it matters how God sees me. Yes. How does God see me? And I want to be viewed by God as someone that can not just be used, but someone that he can rely on. He can trust. Yes. We talked about that word just last episode. Someone that he can trust. And I hope and I pray to God that I can be someone that he can trust in the midst of all my flaws. Yes. Because, bro, those make or break moments, they come quite often in life when you're an adult, when you once you're out of your parents' roof. Yeah. So you want to make sure that when you do arrive in those moments that you're like, man, what does God think about me? Yeah. How does God think about me in this situation? But
yeah, I feel like, whenever because we all got younger kids, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. But you always think about, hey, when they get older, when they grow up, what are they going to think about this time? What are they going to think about me? How are they going to be? And you want to be the type of person that you want them to be, and you want to make it so that they're even better. Yes. You want to lay the groundwork that they can then build on and be better one day. And I think about it like, with Jesus, when you take on the name, Jesus Christ on you, you become his representative here. So it's not just you, it's you're representing your Father, and you want to do it to the best of your ability. And I think about that just like, I want my son to be proud of who he is and where he came from. And it's like, that's just not going to happen by itself. It's just not going to happen on its own. It's going to have to be intentional. Yeah. You're going to have to think, man, what are the intentional things I can do now that are going to lead to this?
Yeah. So to kind of ask, I want to ask you something here. I remember the person, I want to say, obviously you're not going to be offended. You're like my brother, but the person you used to be, right? Before kids, before you kind of referred to that person earlier, when you were with Dom early on. But that person, do you see that person come out quite often in ministry? Like how do you discern now between, okay, this person that, is very straightforward, very, I don't really care about your feelings at this moment. Yes. That person, when is the right moment to bring that person back out? Because I feel like that person can actually be used. Yeah. It needs to be used in some conversations. But what's the right, after so many times that you may be spending so many, other moments that you're spending with this person, trying to mold this person, and you're kind of getting frustrated, but you're saying to them, listen, you gotta get back on the straight and narrow here. Yeah. When does that person come out? As far as when's the right way to use that person?
So in the past, I've always just been like, I'm just gonna say how I feel in the moment, and you can handle it however you want to handle it, and be upset, whatever. And now I use a little bit more wisdom, a lot more wisdom. I'll say that, because I want my peers, I want people to respect me, I want people to look at me and want to come to me, I want to be approachable. Especially working in ministry. You don't want to be someone that's like, oh man, I don't want to, but because of who I was, I do still see people handle me as I was, not who I am now, but as I was back then. And it always cracks me up, makes me laugh. I'm like, oh, I'm actually a really nice guy. Like relax. The Lord has worked on me. The Lord has worked on me, and I am not that guy. But there are times, when it's serious and I need to get there, I can get there. But it's never anywhere close to what it was.
You ever feel frustrated that people still view you as that person? And solely that person?
Sometimes, because I'm just like, man, I've done so much growth, Lord. Like, my goodness, I've done so much growth. And I'm like, then I question, I'm like, well, did I? Well, no, I feel like I did.
Right.
So I'm pretty confident in where I was versus where I'm at now.
I got you.
And sometimes, it can be frustrating. But I believe God has allowed that experience to kind of influence how I handle other people. There's this lady at my job, for instance, lady that she's about my age, and she's always just been very aggressive, and very confrontational. And her and I saw a lot of me in her, and as far as like the attitude, the confrontation, the whatever. And just over the last 6 months, I've noticed like a change in her attitude, her demeanor and stuff like that. So she started working in the area, and I've been training her, to work back in the area that I'm in. And she started talking to me about just how she's trying to, get back with God, get back in good standings with God. And she wants to go to church, but the shift she allows that she's on now doesn't allow her that time. And she begins talking to me about just baptism. And I was like, oh, wow, okay, this came out of nowhere. Like, here this person is. And so I was just like, well, this person isn't who I thought she was at the before this conversation. So we started talking, and I told her about Jesus' name baptism. And I quoted off Acts 2:38. And she was just like, whoa, I got like chills. And I was just like, well, that's the Holy Ghost there, And so I really was just like, hey, I said, our church is only like 10 minutes down the road, and I believe because I was able to be graceful and allow her time, like allow her space to grow and give her that opportunity to start talking to me. I could have just been like, because first of all, I don't like training people, not because I don't like training people. It's just because it's slow. I feel like it slows me down.
Yeah.
I'm a man of like habit, creature of habit. So I have like a certain way I do things. And then when you're training someone, you know how it is. Like you have to slow it down. Okay, hey, look, and for whatever reason, it was that day, I think it was Monday. It was just this past Monday. I just was like, slow it down. I was at ease, and I was just walking her through things. And then we had that conversation. And I was just like, well, wow, thank you, Lord. Like sometimes I gotta slow myself down.
Yeah.
And things happen.
The fact that God took you on this journey of being rough around the edges at first, and then you have grown from that. What you're really saying is this, now you have the ability to give people grace that are the same way.
Yeah.
That maybe others like me maybe, or some others that aren't able to do that because they're like, man, that person's just rough, bro.
Yeah.
That person's just rough.
Yeah, you can't.
But the way that God has transformed you now you're able to see what He saw in you.
Yeah.
That's the beauty. That's the beauty of that journey, right there.
It's a beautiful thing. I thought about that. I was praying. I was like, man. I was like, that was a great moment. Like I walked away from that. And you guys, like the episode that dropped yesterday, I believe it was, talking about entering new seasons and different stuff like that. And I believe God is entering. Like I'm entering into a new season where, like, this is gonna sound crazy. Not crazy, but just like funny coming from me, just because of just everything we've been talking about, that like I actually now feel like I can truly sympathize with people and
Mm.
actually care about feelings and kind of have empathy, so to speak. And I say that because the Lord has placed different situations in my life where I feel like I was, hey, you say you're a good friend. You say you're praying for us.
Mm.
Where's the sympathy? Where's the, and there's this guy, I'm gonna try to say this without, getting choked up here. This is a guy at my job. He has a 2-year-old. Well, he has 3 kids, and I just remember him talking about how he just really was just on fire for God, and how he's bounced back from that bad life that he used to live. He wasn't always a great husband, always a great father and stuff like that to his kids. And their youngest, he was 2. And one morning, we're at work, and he gets this call from like the daycare, or a lady that was watching their kids, and he has to rush to the hospital. And his 2-year-old passed. And that hit me like a ton of bricks, let me tell you. And I don't think I ever cried over someone else's pain
Mm.
so much in my life. And I think it's just because I'm not only entering into that new season, but I also have a 2-year-old. And I just can't imagine losing a child. But the other thing that really just hits is the fact that I remember him telling me that child was so important. Like, not that it was more important than his other 2,
Yeah.
but his other 2 are older. And he felt as though that child was his chance to just kind of redeem himself as a father.
Wow.
And then it's taken away like that. And I mean, even just the other day, I think it was Thursday, we're standing there, we're both crying, we're talking
Yeah.
about just different stuff, and just like, we're there crying at work. I mean, a year ago, you wouldn't have caught me crying in front of anybody,
Yeah.
and then that stuff, I had that going on. And then, with Bishop and everything he's, that's transpired with him, it was just like, I was an emotional wreck the last like month and a half, and just trying to keep that together and try to, compartmentalize that and not let that turn into like a negative thing for my family. Because when you're going through stuff like men, you don't want your kids to see you like crying,
Yeah.
but you also don't want that to turn into, well, I'm trying to pull back, that this turns into now anger. Now I'm having like outbursts where I'm just like, because I'm trying to bottle up an emotion.
Yeah.
And so I had to really step back and think about that. And that was, to that point, like that was something that I was just like, man, maybe God's really entering me into a new season. Because right off the cuff of that, I started feeling like a spirit of conviction. Like, yeah, I'm in different ministries here at church, and so to speak, but there's one thing I haven't done, and it's take that next step forward with my ministry and try to elevate my ministry. And I believe God had been calling me, 2 years ago to do so. And so I've started doing the Ministry Central courses and such. And because I just had a conversation with Kylo, and every time you have a conversation with Kylo, usually you come back with something like a deep point that you never even thought of. Like,
Takes you into deep waters.
yeah, he'll just, one day he's like, Dad, what does it really mean to be a friend? And I was just like, whoa. I was just like, you're a 5. But anyway, so he's like, Dad, I want to grow up and I want to be just like you. And that's something every dad wants to hear. But I started thinking, well, what am I doing right now? Well, I'm, the drummer, I'm in service director, hyphen, whatever. And I've been working in ministry for, 15, 17 years, something like that. And I started thinking about all the different things. And I was like, well, I haven't taken that next step. I said, I feel like if I don't, I'm kind of cheating myself, and I'm kind of showing him that, hey, look, after the drums, Dad's not really doing anything.
Right.
Like I'm not really, I'm not taking that initiative to move forward with things I know I need to do, so I don't want to instill that in him, because that's what I saw. Back to that story with back to that upbringing with my parents. That's what I saw my dad. He just kind of fizzled out, and it was because of his lack of submission. He wasn't intentional about, doing things in the ministry and such. And so I look back at different things and I'm like, well, I don't want to do that. I want to handle that differently.
Mm.
And it's really been a great thing. And because he said to me, yeah, I want to work, I want to work at the church. I want to work at Target. I want to work at Arm & Hammer. I'm like, buddy, you can do much better things. I said, working at the church, that's fantastic. He's talking about not just ministry stuff, but the work nights,
lifestyle,
the work nights that we have here.
Yeah.
He's just like, oh, okay,
Yeah. Yeah. Bro, that's just awesome though.
That's so good.
Bishop always used to say this saying, and this is before I had kids, or I knew anything about being a father. He said, you have to raise your kids on purpose.
Yes.
And I'm like, I think I've talked about this a little bit last season, but when he said that phrase, I'm like, bro, you're saying it wrong. What are you talking about? Like, on purpose. Like, it's supposed to say I think maybe he meant with purpose, or, but he's like, no, you do it on purpose.
On purpose.
And, with all those examples, as far as like you taking that next step, you're raising your kid on purpose.
Yes.
It's on purpose that you're going out of your way and you're diving deeper into things of God.
Yes.
You're not just, and this is not a knock on anybody that's just a drummer. Yes. But you're not just a drummer. You want to be more than just that. When you're playing the drums, you want to minister. Yes. You want to be able to minister. Yes. And you can minister from the drums, and you can minister from doing like things like driving the van and doing, and of course, hyphen and all that. But there's just something special that takes place when you're not just a drummer, but you're somebody that's behind the drums, and the word of God.
Yes.
And you know what the word of God says about his presence, and about what happens when the people respond to his presence, and you start piecing it together in your mind. No longer are you just doing the dance per se, but now you're playing the drums with purpose. With purpose. And you're saying, I'm doing this I'm ministering behind the set. I'm ministering behind the keyboard. I'm ministering behind this microphone. Yeah. You can be a minister without preaching. Yeah. Like, you could be a minister with whatever it is that you're doing in the local assembly, and outside of course the church, you can be a minister at all times. Yes. And the fact that you're doing that, it speaks volumes for sure.
You said this when you were in Texas, and that episode will drop soon, but it's so easy to kind of add to the church. Like, it's just easy to just add. We can come to the church and just
be a body.
Just be a body, But you truly do reap what you sow, and whenever you are giving, God, you're all, in your family, you're all, in the church, you're all, and your kids, like we're talking about, that lays the groundwork for multiplication. Then, yes, for what you are reaping then is multiplied. You're not just being a body or just adding. It's what you are sowing is going to be. It's just going to multiply and multiply.
Yeah. You always talk about growing the church.
Yeah. That's how you really grow the church. Is you're an extension to it. Like you've extended how far it could reach. Yeah. Yes. And you're extending how far you can impact someone else's life or someone else's family. That's truly being a part of the church body, is when you can say, I'm going to submit myself. Yes. Instead of talking about the preacher. I'm going to get behind the preacher. Yeah. I'm going to make sure I support every message. I'm going to be the first one in the altar. That's one thing that my youth pastor, which is now our pastor, Josh, he always said, be like the Marines when it comes to the altar, when it comes to, messages. Be the first ones in, be the last ones out. Yeah. And I it was just a funny saying, but at the same time, I'm like, bro, there's so much wisdom in that. Yeah. Because if I'm the first one there and I'm the last one out, I make sure I don't miss anything when it comes to the altar. I don't miss out on anything when it comes to the presence of God. Yeah. And of course, I take that same approach when it comes to ministry. Be the first one there to work night. Be the last one out. Yep. I don't want to miss out any minute. I don't miss out on anything. I want to be a part of everything, what God is doing in the church and what God is doing in this project. I want to have my hands involved. I want to be the one that's blessing it the most, per se. Yes. I want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
That's how you could do it.
And there's times where like we'll have those work nights, and I always think, man, I really do not feel like going. But not in a bad way. It's just like, man, I've got this
no
going
one wants
on.
to
I've
go.
got this. And so it's just, but I always feel, not that I'm like, the end all be all, whatever, but I always feel like, well, if I don't go,
Mhm.
someone feels like me and I don't go, well, then who does? I always think about that. And that changed for me. As my wife, like that changed. That was like a 360, because it was always like, man, I don't really want to do this, like blah, blah, blah. Like I get this from ministry. And I always like had a bad attitude. And like that shifted, and I grew up and I got over myself, essentially. It wasn't, any one moment. It was just like God telling me, hey, get over yourself. What if it's not about you? It's about church.
Right.
It's about growing the church. It's about being just not only like a good example for my kids, but it's a good example for our younger people. I can't sit up and complain about, oh, well, they don't ever, come to a work night, this
You
and
don't
that,
do it.
if I don't go.
Yeah.
So that's always pops up in my head. That always sticks with me. Hey, if I don't go, what if they cancel it because no
one showed up?
No one showed up. Then I feel horrible, and so
you complaining about it is just you feeling sorry for yourself.
yeah.
It's just you trying to make your, oh, I'm sorry you gotta go through this. It's like, bro, just show up.
Just show
like
up.
it's okay.
Yeah.
You're gonna live. And the
Yeah.
thing is, there's so much blessing into coming into those work nights and going into and getting involved, and not just work nights, but getting
Yeah.
involved in things like Bible studies
Yeah.
and getting involved in things like, teaching when they need somebody to step in and say, hey, can someone teach adult class? You stepped in,
Yeah.
beautifully. But just stepping in the void. And the void that is, the voids that are in the church, plugging the holes, making sure that, hey, the flow doesn't stop here. I'm going to step in and I'm going to do it. And I'm going to make sure I'm going to give it 110%. I'm not just going to get in there and complain about it when I'm there.
Yeah.
But I'm going to make sure that when I'm in the void, when I'm plugging the hole, I'll make sure that I have the best attitude, that I'm positive about it, that I love every second of it.
Yeah.
Because I just know when I'm called upon, I answer it.
Yep.
I want to be the one to answer it. That's the rich part about it, is when you can truly step into a role and say, not just say, well, I'm doing this because no one else is doing this,
Yeah.
but I'm doing this because God requires me, is asking me, and is requiring for me to do it. And I want to do
change, because if you're doing it just because, oh man, I feel guilty not doing it. I mean, eventually that guilt's just gonna, whatever. If you're operating purely off of flesh, eventually the flesh is gonna get weak, and you're gonna be like, I've done it before, so I don't really need to go tonight, and
Right.
that happens. Sometimes those thoughts pop up. I'm not gonna lie, I'm human. Sometimes you just want to get home, you want to spend time with family, you want to catch up on laundry, you want to go do this and that. And my wife is always like, look, this stuff will be here when you get here. Just, I got it. I'll take care of things here. Just go and, help out.
Let me tell you the one thing I pulled from this episode right here so far. In order for you to be that family guy that we joked about in the beginning of the episode, that ultimate family guy, that ultimate father, in the household, that priest that you want to be, it boils down to one thing. You got to be able to submit.
Yeah.
You got to be able to submit.
Yeah.
Submit to the church, submit to the leaders, and just watch how God will change and turn your household upside down. Because I'm telling you, if we got a lot of complainers, we got too many people complaining, and not enough people saying, this is good. Yeah. We are doing good. We are having revival, and we are in the midst of the complaints and in the midst of people, not seeing it for themselves.
Yeah,
God still works and God still operates.
Works. Yeah,
you could either get with us or get out of the way.
Yeah, we're going to have revival either way.
So, we say obedience is greater than sacrifice, right? Or submission is greater than sacrifice. Well, we think about it as two different things. What if it's the same thing? What if showing up to a work night, it's how we view it? Yeah. Is this sacrifice or is this obedience?
Right.
Is this sacrifice or is this submission?
That's so good. Wow. That's right.
We think of, instead of being, I'm going to sacrifice or I'm going to be obedient or submit.
You would see it as obedience.
See it as obedience.
See it as obedience. Yeah.
More so than a sacrifice. Because, bro, that's the ultimate point of servanthood, is what he's talking about here, is making sure once you are getting into that work night, or we're getting into that ministry, you're not seeing it, oh, it's taking this away from me, but you're saying, man, I can't wait to do it.
Yeah.
I get to do this. I'm so excited to do this.
Yeah.
Because I'm being obedient to the word of God.
Yeah.
I'm being obedient to my pastor,
Yes.
and making sure that I'm blessing any way I can possible. Bro, man, this has been a great episode, bro.
It really has.
This has
You
blessed
guys
me
sent me
tremendously.
those notes. I'm like, I don't know how we're going to cover this in the
We
in
can
the
go
time.
on and
we
on.
didn't
We
even
go-
get to marriage yet. Like, one of the questions was about marriage.
But man,
It's been about kids. And, I love talking about my kids, man.
Oh, yeah,
that's something I'm passionate about.
I know if I start talking about my kids, it's
Yeah.
over, because I mean, Arya is just one of the smartest kids I know personally,
Yeah.
and
She's so smart.
and then Asher, man, Asher's got some work. But Asher is
I love Asher though. He's so funny. Bro.
Asher's funny. Asher
He
is
just does whatever he wants.
Asher's my
I love
Cruz.
it.
What Cruz is to
Yes. Yeah.
you. It's just like, bro, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah.
I ask him, like, what are you doing, bro?
Yeah.
And then he answers me though. He tries to be like playful about it. I'm like,
Yeah.
well, I can't be mad at you.
Yeah. It's
But-
so hard to be mad at them, right?
It
like,
is.
It's just.
It is. You gotta laugh it off, bro. But
Yeah.
bro, thanks for coming on, bro.
Yeah,
thanks
thank you
thanks
for
being
having
here
me,
this morning.
man.
I know
Thank you
you
for
had to
having
pull. I know we had to pull you away from another ministry, but hey.
Yeah, nah.
But hey, glad you got to be a part of it, bro. It won't be the
No, this
last
was-
time you're a part of it, that's for sure. We got so much more to talk about, but
Yeah.
we hope you enjoyed this episode. Thanks again, RJ, for being a part of it. God bless you in Jesus' name. Bro, that was
What a great
fantastic.
episode.
Bro, really? I did.
That was
all right.
fantastic.
What a
bro.
great
that,
episode.
that was rich, bro. That was fantastic.
I was nervous because I was just like, man, I listen to this podcast all the time. So, I'm glad I listened to it yesterday, because that talking about the new season, entering into the new season, I was just like, well, that's kind of where I'm at right
This
now.
is such
you
an
know?
extension of that.
And,
You know that just that little point right there, man. I
Yeah.
listened to the previous one. There's a lot of people. I know this is super random, but it just made me think. There's a lot of people that are like, I missed out. I feel like I'm not a part of the church. I tell you what, a lot of people can fix their problems if they just listen to the sermon. If they just truly listen to the sermon.
Truly,
A lot of people don't feel attached to the body, I feel like, because
Yeah.
they're not listening to the word of God
Yeah.
on Sundays, let alone throughout the weekdays. I mean, that's a problem in itself.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you right now, there's a lot of people that feel lost in the church because maybe they skip out, or they don't listen to a sermon one week and then they try to pick up from the next. But I'll tell you what, a lot of our preaching, especially as of late, has been one big long extension of a message, one into the other.
Yes.
And it's not that it's the same message. It's just,
No.
it's like, again, another part to it.
Another part, yes.
And so many people, I feel like, get lost in the week, or get lost in the moment because they didn't listen, quite frankly, to the last word. And they're trying to catch up. But you got to be able to, be a part of that thread that God is sowing, in the church and in the spirit.
So I think I said in the last episode, is just why you walk with God.
Yeah,
The walk,
It's a walk.
Yeah.
absolutely, man.
Yeah, man.
I-
And you can always go back
It's the
and
journey.
listen to the other sermons.
Yeah.
Like, there were a couple pods that you guys did last season. I went back and I was like, man, I missed something. I know I did. So
Yeah.
I'll go back and listen
Yeah.
to it.
Right. And there's and we do episodes where I'm like, man, I think I mentioned this last season in episode 2, but it was a small phrase that I said, but I remember back to that one sentence that I said. I'm like, bro, this point right here, it brings me to this point. And again, it's that thread. That thread. And that's what the word of God is. It's a thread from, Genesis the whole way to Revelation.
It's all connected.
It's all connected.
bro.
And you're not going to be connected.
No.
You can't afford to miss out on one sermon.
No.
You can't afford to miss out on one message.
No.
You can't afford to miss out on one thing,
Yeah.
that's going on in church.
You cannot afford to miss out on the moment.
The moment.
That's what we got to do next. We got to talk about
Moment.
moments. Missing the moments.
Missing the moments.
Yeah, we got to talk about the moments.
Moments
Because,
are crucial, bro.
bro, we talked about this at work a little bit.
We got to save it for now. We got to do
Okay.
an episode.
Yeah. That's something else to look forward to, is moments.
Moments.